everyone. Welcome to the Zone to Speak podcast. I'm your host, Juliana. This episode of Zone to Speak is supported by Peloton, the ultimate sunscreen for athletes. If you know me, you know I never leave the house without sunscreen, and Peloton is my go-to. It's lightweight, breathable, and designed for endurance sports, perfect for any day out on the saddle. And because they are supporting the podcast, you get 20% off your order. Just head to the link in the show notes and use the code ZONE2SPEAK at checkout. Protect your skin, fuel your adventures, and support the pod while you do it. Strength training is one of those topics that almost every cyclist agrees is important until it's time to actually do it. How much is enough? What exercise actually matter? Can strength training really makes you faster, or is it mostly about staying healthy? Today's guest has spent years helping endurance athletes answer those questions. Derek Teel is the founder of Dialed Health, a strength coach specializing in cyclists, and has worked with everyone from everyday riders to some of the biggest names in endurance cycling, including Lael Wilcox. But today's conversation goes beyond squats and deadlifts. 2 years ago, Derek suffered a life-changing accident that left him wondering if he would ever walk again. Fast forward, and he has climbed the equivalent of Mount Everest on his bike. So today we're talking strength, recovery, resilience, and what really takes to build a body that can keep riding for years. Let's get into it. Welcome to the pod, Derek.
Thanks for having me. That intro was beautiful. I'm motivated.
Thank you. Thank you. So cyclists finally started taking strength training seriously, but there is still a lot of confusion. If every cyclist listening today only remembered one thing about strength training, what would you want it to be?
It would be that consistency trumps intensity. Because if you don't mind me elaborating,
please.
It's taken years for cyclists to mutually agree on the fact that, okay, this is worthwhile and this is something to do. When I first started working with cyclists specifically was 2019. And even at that time, it was not the same narrative that it is now in 2026. So it's come a long way as far as the agreement. There's been a lot of evidence that has supported it, and there's just proof from the top of the sport down. And that's helped in a lot of ways, but it's also come at a time where people can, self-make programs on ChatGPT. They can have now 1,000 different YouTube videos on the topic and how to do it. So it's become this information overload thing. And when you look at a lot of the data that supports strength training for cyclists, a lot of it has to do with maximum strength phases in strength training. And it would make sense because you would think, okay, primary goal of strength training is to increase force production on the pedals. I want to be able to push on the pedals harder.
Yes.
That's what a healthy athlete thinks, at least. If you're unhealthy, or if you have an injury and you need corrective exercise, all you care about is being pain-free. So it's just funny, like there's these ways to come into strength training and different motivations. But it's easy to look at these papers and what the top athletes in the world are doing and think, okay, I need to have these super high intensity workouts, when in reality, those can start to conflict with what you're currently doing that's already good. And there's a way to work into it. There's a way to work that intensity into your year and get the benefits from it, but you cannot do it all the time. It's like you can't always peak you can't peak year round like you would for a race. You have to have training phases, and you have to periodize training to get the most of it. And there's so much of strength training that people are underutilizing because they're so focused on just intensity, increase force production, higher power, stronger legs. And again, those are all good things, but I think that it can almost stop people from starting, or they feel like they get in over their head and then just back off completely. So consistency trumps intensity, without a doubt. You can get a lot of benefits from strength training without going crazy.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I'm glad to hear that because I also tell some of my girlfriends when they say, like, oh, I have no time, I always say, like, just even if it's just 10 minutes, just for the mental benefits as well. You felt like you did something
Yeah.
for you. It just feels so good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the frequency is very important too. That's a conversation that's talked about a lot right now because true maintenance protocol is 1 day per week, but it's also a very slippery slope. If you miss one, now you're kind of behind. Also, do a lot of people have a perfect 90-minute block to dedicate to this quote unquote perfect strength training session? A lot of things can interfere with it. And so I always recommend for people, even in a maintenance phase, 2 days per week minimum is the frequency you should target, even if they are. I've honestly never promoted 10-minute workouts. I usually say 30-minute, but I'm comfortable saying 20. I'll meet you halfway. 20 minutes twice a week, if you're focused, can really help you either maintain or, depending on where you're at, progress in your strength. But really, to create more strength, that 2 day a week frequency is kind of the minimum there. But again, I would rather have two short, mellow sessions opposed to just one that maybe you're inconsistent with any day.
That makes sense. Yeah, cyclists don't really love the gym. And I remember from my triathlon days, I was like, I'm already swim, bike, and run. I can add gym to this
Mm-hmm.
until you start getting injuries, like we talked just talked about it. So, why do you think so many cyclists and even triathletes still see strength training as optional?
Well, if you're healthy in your sport and you already have a packed schedule, I mean, triathletes really, I think, are at the extreme end on this. Cyclists will talk about how hard their schedule is to get their workouts in, but then you talk to a triathlete and you're like, oh my gosh, this
Yes.
seems impossible. You're like, every day is
Yeah.
already a double day. Like,
Yeah.
where do I add this in? And so I think that's a very valid thing to consider, but there's also there's a point where you have to look at the benefits of strength training and say, is it worth, let's just say I'm that maxed out with my time. And a lot of people are. Is it worth actually doing a little less riding or a little less running or one less swim session to get the strength training in, to get those actual benefits from it? I just had a conversation with a cyclist who was in that situation. And I had to honestly ask him, I'm like, do you think you'd actually gain more from 30 minutes of strength training per week than 30 more minutes of riding? And they're like, well, yeah, I do. And it's like, okay, well, you have to walk that out and actually reduce your volume. But it's hard. You get stuck on numbers. You see a TSS score every week. You see a mileage you're hitting every week, and you feel like you need to do that to continue to progress. But it's worthwhile for a lot of people to even consider reducing their volume in their sport to get the benefits from strength for their sport, even if it is a pure injury prevention goal. Really, like, if we take out the performance aspect of it and you just think injury prevention for long-term consistency, nothing's going to help your performance more than that. But oftentimes, even those low intensity strength workouts can really help with your efficiency on the, I speak on biking because it's what I know the best, but it's really all endurance sports. Like, I train Nordic skiers, I have triathletes, I have ultra runners, and your real cycling economy or running economy, how efficiently your body is going to move, can really increase a lot with correct strength training. Like, when your core is stronger, when your hips are not only stronger, but more balanced, same thing with your shoulders and your posture, things feel easier. Your RPE goes down and your durability goes up as well. So it's, again, you have to look at all these benefits of strength training and be like, okay, is a little bit more of my sport going to do these things for me? And the truth is, it's probably not. Like, one reason I'm so passionate about training off of the bike and specifically strength training is that the benefits that you get from it are not things that you can get from more time in your sport.
Yeah.
And like, it's just impossible. And it's what you need to also stay balanced as a human as well, because besides the fact that we all have these common goals as endurance athletes, the thing that we all have in common is that we're just humans, and your human body needs to have a strong foundation and to be balanced long term. And it's not like a fear mongering thing where you don't want to say, okay, well, it's not a if but when an injury comes up or something like that. But your base of general health and wellness is something to consider for your performance and hopefully for yourself as a human. Like, we get so wrapped up in our sport, but don't forget that your health as a human is the most important thing. So again, there's just these like layers and layers of reasons why making it a priority is worthwhile. But I also understand how overwhelming it can be to just hit your specific goals in your sport as well. And
Yeah.
there's so many good things from aerobic training that benefit your general health and wellness that you don't get from strength training. So we need both, but we just need simple solutions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there has to be some healthy balance between them that you can still, like you said, the durability and the advantages you get from strength training and longevity as well is
Yeah.
worth maybe giving up if you don't have in your schedule, giving up some time of your sport training into the strength training. Which I was thinking about what you said, social media, for example, there's no shortage of advice online. What's the biggest mistake endurance cyclists are making when they first start strength training?
I think that they're getting too specific. And as I mentioned, like the Chat GPT reference earlier, they're almost taking these like 5 different deep dives into the perfect leg routine or the perfect, I don't know, exercise for every single thing that they want to improve. And then they try to get it to mold into this program. And oftentimes it spits out something that I look at and I'm like, I mean, that is good, but also that seems like impossible to do, especially considering some lifestyle factors we considered, the fatigue, the soreness, the things that are going to come along with that. So I think going too far into it too soon it's like a very natural thing as an endurance athlete to do. It's like that type A personality that just wants to like do the most.
Yeah.
But I also see like a big mistake of cyclists in particular doing dedicated leg days in the gym. And it's funny because even cyclists who don't really like the gym tend to like the feeling of a hard leg workout because it feels so in line with their goals. And it's like that their ability to suffer through a leg workout in a gym is so much higher than the average person because they're just used to that feeling and it feels good in that like weird way, And
Yeah.
so I also see cyclists, even triathletes, even runners, they'll go into the gym and just do this dedicated leg session. And again, it makes so much sense in the moment, but the reality of how it impacts the rest of your schedule is unrealistic. The DOMS you get from it, the delayed onset muscle soreness, is crazy. And then what happens is they'll get into this cycle where they only do it once a week because they were so sore. But that's the pattern of forever soreness. Like one day a
Yes.
week is not enough to adapt to something. So it's
Yeah.
like if you do a workout that was too hard, now you're waiting a week to do it again because of the fatigue. It'll never really improve. And then all of a sudden you'll just say, oh, it's not for me because I was so sore and I couldn't do my threshold workout or whatever it was. So that is kind of, I know it wasn't as simple as just saying the one thing, but it's like going too far into it and too deep into this perfect program and specifically doing leg only sessions. I would stay away from that, especially if you're starting out.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen this happening with others that they do have, they want to start and then they get all excited, get to the gym, and then they're sore for days, cannot do anything. And then, like I said, it's that cycle of like waiting forever to go back and not adjusting. And it's really important to have a coach to also not just to give you the right workout for you, but also to match with the training for your sport.
Yeah, I think so. I think that a lot of athletes could benefit from a more general approach in the beginning because there are these fundamental movements that as humans will keep us more balanced. And this is something I learned in the general fitness industry. And it boils down to the 7 effective movements, which I got from the gym Equinox that I used to work for. You used to live in New York, so I'm sure you're familiar with it.
I used to go to Equinox.
I love it. I love some bougie gyms.
Yeah.
I've learned a ton there. They invest in their trainers a lot. And one of the things that I've brought into my programming is the 7 effective movements. And it's essentially the 7 movements you'd want to do at least one day a week to ensure that you have a relatively balanced program. And it's a more general approach, but if you did these 7 effective movements at a low intensity to start, it would probably mean that you're going to mitigate the risk of soreness and not overdo any one area. And also, you can't forget that you are training your legs a lot in your sport. And so you need to consider the volume of your lower body training in the gym. So the 7 effective movements are a knee dominant movement, so like a step up or a lunge, hip dominant, squat or deadlift, core, so anything that involves a core exercise like a plank or a Palloff press or cable rotations. You have a horizontal push, like a push up, horizontal pull, which is like a row, and then you have vertical push and pull, so pull up or a lat pull down, and then like a shoulder press. And so typically desk workers, cyclists, doing a 2-to-1 ratio of back exercises to or pulling exercises to pushing exercises is good for your back and to help with posture, pull people's shoulders back, make sure that those things are staying in line and that you're not slowly getting into that upper cross syndrome, head jutted forward, shoulder impingement, those types of things. So you start, how I do is I start with the 7 effective movements, and then you can kind of start leaning one way or another, depending on someone's personal needs or their sport, or it could be someone self-identifying that too. There's all sorts of movement assessments you can do to understand, okay, I should spend more time with my hip dominant movements or my pulling movements. So that is a really good approach for somebody to kind of fix that idea of, I want stronger legs, I'm going to go smoke my legs. It's like, okay, how do I get a couple leg movements in, get the benefits from strength training, get more stable, build the durability, don't smoke myself, and also work on these other things as a human that are really going to benefit me. But it's so funny, the upper body work, triathletes, I think, are a little bit more open to it, especially with swimming. They're already doing a lot for their shoulders and their lats. But the confidence that you get with handling a bike when you have more upper body strength is so legit. The stability through your core, how you can stabilize power from your foot all the way through your core into your shoulder and your arm on the handlebar. It's like you can't, I mean, you could explain it on paper, but until someone really feels it, it's hard to have that motivation to do it.
Yeah. Well, like you said in the beginning, sometimes it takes an injury for someone to actually go do it and see how it impacts them positively and then make that part of their routine. But here's the question.
Unfortunately, it's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's the question that probably everyone wants answered. Can lifting weights actually make you faster, or is the biggest benefit somewhere else?
It can absolutely make you faster. Yes. Is the biggest benefit somewhere else? I think that's a personal question. You know, I've worked with people in person as a trainer who they come to me because they're like, I want to be faster on the bike. And then all of a sudden they do a family vacation and they lift their dog into the car. And then the feedback I gave was like, oh my gosh, it was so much easier lifting my dog in and out of my trunk. Like it was awesome. Like usually it's a struggle, and now I didn't even have to think about it. And it's funny because those little day-to-day life things can really impact you. And so it's like, it's very personal depending on someone's real true needs. And sometimes they don't know it until it's fulfilled that way. But yeah, it can absolutely get you stronger on the bike and just purely make you faster, without a doubt. Like even mobility training, or even activation training. This is crazy. I've had one of the wildest things was based off just some simple mobility, some simple self-myofascial release, which is using a foam roller, and some activation of the hips. I had a crit racer do their all-time 3-second power, like after just doing a warm-up like that for the first time ever. And so a lot of it can be neurological. A lot of it could be about aligning your joints a little bit better. You know, if your joints are stacked, it doesn't take as much effort to stabilize them. Like you could just push your legs straight down and you're not losing anything when your knee caves in or your ankle buckles or something like that. So there's just this efficiency when you're aligned.
Yeah.
that can come from strength training. And that could just be corrective exercise, like almost physical therapy looking things, but even mobility. Okay. Do you have more increased force production by just pushing harder on the pedals because your legs are stronger? Yes. That's like the most obvious thing people think of, but are you are you faster now because you can hold an aero position more comfortably because of the mobility work you've been doing? Or because now in that position that you struggled to hold, it feels easier, RPE goes down and you can push a little bit harder, or you can stabilize your core more in that position. So there's so many layers to how it could benefit you, and they're so real. Like I almost used to feel like I needed to give a disclaimer before I said everything, because it's like there was this period of time, and I want to say it was like post COVID, like 2021 to 2023, where
Mhm.
the science heavy approach was like big, and it's incredibly important for directing programming and all these things. But it was like you couldn't say anything without having a study on hand to back it up, or people, it would drive you nuts. And so I held myself back from like just saying like the truth, which is like, oh my gosh, all those reasons I just listed are true. Uh, even though it sounds like crazy claims, you know what I mean? Even though it sounds like it's like too good to be true, it is to some level, but it depends on how trained a person is, and it depends on the individual. Not everything works for everyone. Some people have strengths, some people have weaknesses that are a little bit different. So those are all benefits I've seen as a trainer working with hundreds, if not thousands of people in person and also online. But you're not going to get all of them, but
Yeah.
those are all the like potentials out there for you without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, completely agree. Um, Still talking a little bit about the gym. I know that a lot of riders start strength training in the winter because there's less time on the bike outdoors. But then racing starts and the gym disappears. How should strength training change throughout the year with the seasons? I know we talked about consistency, but I don't know if there's a way that people can try to be more consistent through off season.
Yeah. Yeah. Off season, mid season. So that 2 day a week for building strength is really the minimum bar. You
Hmm.
could go to 3 days per week. That tends to be based upon how much volume you're really doing. I mean, there's a point where when you're doing over 10 hours of volume, even during the winter, even if it's low intensity, if you have a family and a full-time job, it's like you just got to consider the real recovery time and those things needed. So I would encourage everybody to, okay, off season, nail 2 quality strength training sessions each week. That will be enough to make progress with some adequate volume on the bike. I also recommend stretch every day. Make it a habit. Nightly stretching is a very, very great habit to get into. It's like before you turn on the
Tip.
TV at night, put a foam roller out or a lacrosse ball, get into some positions on the ground, just roll around a little bit, ask yourself what you need, get into a couple of stretches. That type of maintenance care year round is huge for everyone. So 10 minutes of stretching before you hit the couch and watch TV, whatever it is, totally realistic for everyone, and I highly recommend it. For the off-season strength, 2 really quality strength training sessions per week is going to be what you want to make legitimate progress. And the off-season is a good opportunity for you to periodize your training. So for me, this would be taking someone through a muscular endurance phase, like starting slightly higher reps and then going down to more of a strength hypertrophy phase. So getting toward like 8 to 12-ish reps and then moving toward a max strength phase. And this could be like 4 weeks at a time, 6 weeks at a time. But this will allow you to progress up to that heavy weight where you're doing 5 reps and it's like a rate of perceived exertion of 9 and you're picking up a trap bar and going heavy. That is the most effective and the safest to do after you periodize it with those blocks. And then after that, you can work on speed and power, and hopefully that could take you right into your season. And then at that point, it's about maintenance. So, well, for a lot of athletes, there's going to be a lot of people that can, peak toward an A event, and then they have 3 months again before their next event. And I noticed this with a lot of working professionals. You have 2, maybe 3 calendar races a year. And so
Yeah.
you can almost do those cycles throughout the year. But if it doesn't feel realistic, if you're someone that gets to July, Tour de France is on, and you're like, I'm riding every day, the goal at that point is, as mentioned, for true maintenance, one quality session per week can be enough to maintain a lot of those gains that you made in the off season. But that frequency is so important, especially if you kind of missed that week or that one session, or the session just wasn't as good, or you had to shorten it for some reason. My suggestion for someone trying to do true maintenance in the bare minimum, so they don't have to start over in the off season, which we should definitely consider. Focus on one good session per week, and then just do like a way more reduced session as your second day. Let it be an activation session. Like, it should almost resemble a yoga session with a little bit more band work, or maybe you're doing a few pull-ups, or like some more strength focused work. But again, it doesn't have to be equal level intensity as that one session that you're doing to truly maintain. So I would say keep the frequency year round of 2 days per week. But if you really want to just maintain, back off one of those sessions to the point where it's almost just warm up, activate, little core work, and then call it a day.
Makes sense. It makes total sense. And does someone racing 300 kilometers versus 1,000 kilometers, do they need a different approach to strength training, or no, because we're looking at just core strength, legs, is there any difference?
There is. The max strength phase is going to be more important for your traditional gravel or road racer, like events that are just shorter, that are naturally going to be higher intensity. Those numbers do start to make more of a difference. And so for an ultra endurance athlete, like you mentioned, like with Lael Wilcox, she'll still go through a max strength phase. In fact, her recent prep was so amazing to see her, just the capability after 6 months of consistent strength training was so cool. She was doing agility work. She was doing eccentric loading, isometrics, a lot of things that focus on durability and tendon strength, ligament strength. Those, again, are all very necessary for XC World Cup racer, or someone who's actually in a grand tour, and doing a lot of like 4-ish hour stages that are very off and on and punchy. But those athletes on the shorter events are going to definitely want to spend more time in a max strength phase and really focus on that real power output. Whereas someone who's doing, ride across the world or ride across America, or some type of ultra endurance event that's over 24 hours, that is going to become less relevant, with the exception of the durability that you get from it. So for them, they don't necessarily need to focus on their max load or even power as much, like their speed of moving a load, but they could focus on moving a load slowly, time under tension, a little bit more muscular endurance, and like those isometrics. So, and it's interesting because the power and plyometrics and impact do help with durability quite a bit, just because of the impact. But again, it's like the real use of that speed and that power isn't quite as relevant in the ultra endurance events. So I think that's like probably the biggest difference.
Okay. And after working with Lael, what separates elite performers from everyone else?
They show up and do the work crazy consistently. That's the thing with Lael. She's so low maintenance. And she'll speak up if she has questions or wants something different. But I noticed this with other athletes as well. Is like they just show up and they really do the work. And they're not overthinking. They're not overthinking it for the most part. And a lot of that has to do with confidence in coaching and knowing that, hey, my coach here for strength training is figuring this thing out for me, and I can trust that they're putting the right thing on my calendar, and I'm just going to do that. And the same thing with the on the bike training and anyone that they're going to professionally for that help. So they have that, it's like less decision fatigue, because a lot of us amateurs are trying to make all these decisions ourselves, and it's the information overload, paralysis by overanalysis. Like, we're going through a lot of these things, and pro athletes question it, but I think that they're just way better at trusting the process. They know that most of their workouts are going to feel average, and they're totally comfortable with that. And so they just stay the course. So I think that is really the biggest thing. Of course, there's these genetic freaks and these, crazy talented people who pick things up faster and make progress quicker, but they're still checking the basics, like the boxes of the foundation. It's like they understand that a lot of the boring, simple stuff gets
Makes a
so many of the results.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
they don't, for example, a difference between a high performer and someone who is just trying to desperately to stay consistent, essentially, or trying to get fit. I could have people who just want a different workout just because they're bored because they did a workout 3 weeks in a row. And it's like a high performer would never say that. They would never say like, hey, I'm kind of bored with this. It would
Yeah.
purely be based off of like, what is this serving? And it's not that they don't enjoy their rides or don't want to do, things that are fun to them. But again, it's like they just understand the work that is involved, and it is really it's like their patience is much longer. Like they can just sit and like do the same thing for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for anyone listening, trying to improve, I think what I'm hearing is trust the process, trust your coach, be consistent, even if it's shorter sessions, just be consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. That if there's okay, so I learned this from Joe Friel, one of the founders of Training Peaks, legendary coach in the States. He was on my podcast and he said that when he is really starting with a new client, there's 3 layers of things that they want to focus on. And this has really resonated with me a lot because it's a way of thinking I've had, but he just articulated it so well. And it's something it's been almost a year ago since I chatted with him, and I've been repeating it to so many people. But the first thing that you want to figure out with your training is your frequency. And so this is how consistent you are. How many sessions can you do throughout a week? Let's max out. Let's get you doing the thing as often as possible throughout your week. And once you have that kind of toward its limit or at a place where it feels good, it's enough to make progress. It's a little bit of a push, but again, you can stay consistent with it. Then you focus on the volume. Okay, within all of these sessions, like how can we bring the volume up to build up your base and get the most adaptation from it? Okay, so we stretched out this session as long as we could and this session as long as we could. Now we're noticing, okay, this is probably a good place for us to sit. Now let's focus on intensity. So frequency, volume, intensity, in that order is how a lot of people should approach their training. I mean, this is what I did after my injury. The very first thing I did was I got back on my frequency. The volume certainly didn't matter and the intensity was impossible. But it didn't mean that I didn't show up and do my strength training on that Tuesday. Because for me, the first thing I could do is just get back to that frequency. And it's crazy because a bike ride is a bike ride and there's just an infinite amount of levels you can do it at. But if you show up for your bike ride every Tuesday, the level's going to increase. You know what I mean? It's the person that feels like, oh, well, it's just not enough to make progress, or it doesn't feel like it's really doing anything because so-and-so's riding twice as much. And like, I know I want to be here, but it's just I'm so far from it. Like, how am I going to bridge that gap? I hear people walk through this in their brain a lot, and they do. I do consulting calls, so they'll do it with me. And that's the first thing we have to like recognize is that, okay, the only way to bridge the gap is to start doing the thing more often. And then like the intensity of one session doesn't matter until you nail this side of it. And so, yeah, that from Joe has really, really stuck with me and helped even direct my own training, and it helped me post injury a lot.
Yeah, and it will stick with me. I was just writing it down. I loved it. And because I am going through this right now, because I have been moving and so many things happening in my life that I was just like, I can't be having the stress of like, oh, I didn't train and feeling like crap. So I'm starting again. But actually, I'm happy to hear this because I was just focusing on the frequency. I'm like, I just want to have fun. I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to ride my bike. Just work on the frequency. And then I'm going to think about the volume and the intensity. So this is great to hear. So thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that resonates with you because it did for me a lot. And I think bike riding can really be that way. You know, one of the first things I did was just put a different data screen on my bike. It's just time of session and elapsed time, or I'm sorry, time of day and elapsed time. And even though I don't steer away from most numbers, I get on a scale way every morning. Like, I like the numbers, but there's a point where you have to be like, okay, am I not wanting to get on the bike because I don't feel mentally ready to go try and hold this power that I normally do, or that I used to do a year ago or prior to injury, this or that. So there's a point where, yeah, you have to just turn your brain off and just do the thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, that it's funny though, because on the flip side, and I'm not just doing this as like a shameless plug because I write and sell programs and all these things for strength. Strength training is this unique thing that typically you can turn your brain off and do better with a very structured program. There's so many decisions you have to make with strength training that if you don't come into a strength training session knowing exactly what you're going to do, you're going to spend half of your time thinking about what to do, and that decision fatigue and then second guessing it. It's so hard to get into the flow. And so it's funny because on one hand, I think, riding, the structure is important, but it's easy for most people to just go for a bike ride or just go for a run or whatever and just not pay attention to anything, completely unstructured. And to have what you feel like is a successful time, it's not really easy to do that in the gym. Even myself as a trainer, maybe it's worse because I know so many different exercises and options,
Yeah.
but I have to plan it and write it down. Like, if I don't come into it like allows me to actually just look at what I'm doing, do it, and then in the process of doing it, I can turn my brain off, feel the weight, make those decisions on form and focus, put the focus in the right area as opposed to what am I going to do next. So it's the one thing when you look at the big picture of training that I would say is kind of this outlier where it's like, actually the more structure, the better. But also I think it's having the mindset as an endurance athlete to not get too hung up on the numbers. If you're an elite world tour rider at the tip of the spear, okay, how fast you move a bar, the numbers, these things are very relevant, but this is your job. Okay, you should be stressing about it. Like, right?
Yeah.
For all of us, it's like whether or not you put 5 more pounds on the bar, or you do one less set, or you just don't feel like going heavy at all, or whatever it is, don't focus on those numbers. Just have a good quality session, move well. And typically, I do a lot of like sets and circuits. Typically by the second or third time through something, you're ready to push it naturally. And so it's having a combination of that mindset. It's like the structure allows you to be specific, make less decisions, but then also being in that mindset of being like, it's okay if I don't add more weight this week, can lead to a way better session and really help with consistency. But don't get it twisted. If you guys want to get fitter, you got to push. You do got to push. It's just
There's no shortcut.
Again, that push is like that. That's the next level. You do what it takes to show up and get it done first. And then those performance things will come next over time.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. I would like to talk a little bit about you, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
2 years ago, you shared that you were lying on the pavement, wondering if you would ever walk again, let alone ride. Can you take us back to that day and what happened?
Yeah. It was a very normal Tuesday, Northern California, sunny. I'd actually just finished a podcast and left for a bike ride. So just the most average 2-hour zone 2 ride on a Tuesday you could go for. But unfortunately, I came to a 4-way intersection and saw a car coming fast, assumed they were slowing down because there's a stop sign, 4-way stop. And by the time I looked forward and right and back left, that car had not slowed down at all. And they were doing what's estimated 50 to 60 miles an hour.
Wow.
And before I knew it, I was getting hit. And the last instinct I had was just to jump as high as I could. And I think that really saved my life, if not my spine, because the injuries were really I had a collapsed lung, but it was mostly waist down. But I hit the car, spiraled in the air, landed on the pavement. I had an open pelvis fracture and was holding my pelvis in my hand. I was losing like a pint of blood a minute.
Wow.
And so very fast bleeding. I had a broken femur, very badly broken femur, broken tibia. I tore my colon. So I had some organ damage and then the lung. And yeah, I just was laying there staring at the sky, just bleeding, and just an unbelievable amount of pain. And I've gone into detail about it. I was actually, I was on the Ted King podcast. I recorded this episode because I was working really hard at the time to get through the trauma of this event. And I was doing tons of therapy, EMDR therapy, if you're familiar with it. It's like a type
Yes,
of
I am.
hypnosis, super effective.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know what? I'm gonna capture this feeling because I had never experienced fear and just emotion like that in my entire life. I mean, it was unbearable, and I was like focused on working hard to get out of it. So 6 weeks after, this was the day after I came out of the hospital after a horrible infection in my hip, and I had open wounds for 11 months. It was like the peak of this horrible fear and pain. And I recorded a podcast, and that would take you through the most detailed step by step of everything I experienced. And I did it because I'm like, I hope to never come back here. And I think capturing this moment can really resonate with a lot of people who are also dealing with fear or some type of traumatic event. But for me, it's been incredibly hopeful because, for one, I was saved literally by someone who showed up on scene, and it was very low likelihood that would happen because it's just a country road in Northern California. You can go 5 minutes without anybody going by. And at the rate I was bleeding, it wouldn't have taken much longer than 5 minutes just to bleed out, let alone just to get help, because the pain was so extreme. But went to the hospital, very long ambulance ride, just staring at the ceiling, just not knowing if I was going to live or not. And really, I think by that point, it was like, okay, am I going to have a leg? Like, am I going to walk? Am I going to play with my boys? I have 3 young boys. And at the time they were 3. So I have 3-year-old twins at the time and a 5-year-old. And so as a father, you want to be big, strong dad for your boys. And so it's just insane. We talk about strength training and performance and all these goals that are at the tip of the spear, and people can really obsess over it and honestly let these kind of things ruin their day. But at the end of the day, when you're looking at the ceiling of an ambulance, wondering if you ever just throw a football with your boys again, none of that matters. None of it matters. And again, it's great how you can recover and recalibrate and set these goals and pursue these things again. But it's the perspective that I've gained from this has been it. I'm grateful for that, without a doubt. And so the hospital, I go under for 2 days of surgery. And I remember 2 days later coming out of the fog of the anesthesia that I was under, breathing tube, half my body casted up. I think I had 70 staples around my body from the surgery sites and just cuts. And I remember the first thing I did, I opened my eyes, and on my left leg, it's where all the damage was. The only thing sticking out of my cast at that time was like my toe, my big toe. And it's crazy, but the very first thing I did was I looked down and I just wiggled my big toe. And that feeling of relief was pretty indescribable. And then I had a doctor come in shortly after, one of the surgeons, and he looked at me. He's like, I know this sounds crazy. He's like, but you're going to be okay. And he's like, as bad as these injuries were, individually, they're all things that you can heal from. For example, I had a horribly broken pelvis. Like, I broke off my entire iliac crest almost. And if you look at my x-ray and you saw the hardware in there and the amount of screws and the length of them and the plates and the before and after, it's like you're going to feel that for the rest of your life, no doubt. However, it wasn't by the joint. the femur was so badly broken, it wasn't even touching itself. There were fragments floating around everywhere, bone everywhere, full titanium rod in the leg, but the hip socket wasn't affected. Now, muscularly, it's been really challenging. Like, I basically tore off like muscles that really help stabilize your knee. A lot of damage, like glute medius, like that whole area of your hip that are so important. Those things were really affected, and it's still things I'm still working through. But when you look at a lot of this stuff individually, it's like, he's like, you're going to heal from this. And that I hung on to those words for so long because, even a year after, I was way overdoing it in recovery. And I was really fighting it. I was like really fighting the reality that I needed to back off because I had so much success in my life up to that point. Like, I was like literally felt like top of the mountain energy leading into that injury. And there was a lot of unnecessary stress, and there was some confusion of things I needed to figure out professionally and personally. But it was so hard to intentionally back off so that I could heal. But I really had to do it. And so, anyways, I just hung on to those words and just focused on the blessing. I mean, it's crazy. I haven't really thought about it this much in a while. But I'll give you another example. I tore my colon in the accident. If you tear your colon like all the way through, like, you could have a colostomy bag for the rest of your life. I didn't even know what that was before this injury. And it was torn, but not to the extent where it couldn't be repaired. And they had to cut open my abs. They did X-lap surgery. So essentially, I have like a 12-inch scar between my abs, lower abs. They pull you open, do the whole thing. But that was one of those blessings where it was like, oh man, like this is going to be okay, And so basically from my chest down, especially targeted to my left side, like all the muscles in my core, my glute, my leg, it just not working for like a month. And I wasn't really supposed to do much. It was crazy. Like, my left glute looked like it deflated. I kid you not. Like, all of a sudden my pants were falling down on that side.
Wow.
I had wound vacuums because of the infection that I got. And then after the infection, 2 of the screws started rubbing a hole through my skin, and they held this, like, it's called hypergranulation. It was so disgusting. A lot of this stuff too, I couldn't post about or take pictures of. Like, people, like, you can't post this kind of stuff
Too
to social
graphic.
media.
Yeah.
Way too graphic. So there's so much of this that people still haven't seen and don't really know, like, the details of what I had to go through, besides the fact that I have a wound vacuum on while I'm, walking around town, and there's tubes coming out of me and like this. And it was just like that for so long. And so just incredibly grateful to be healed, grateful to God for healing, and like for healing, like our body, the fact our bodies can heal is so like, it's so miraculous.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful to have had the knowledge of training that I do, because I was in the hospital for 12 days and 9 days maybe. Anyways, it's kind of a blur, but I remember when I got out of the hospital, the very first thing I did, I mentioned get back to my frequency. This wasn't me trying to be like, I have to prove that I can train through this, or I don't want to lose muscle mass or whatever. This was me being like, I want to get back to me. Okay. So the first thing I did was I grabbed a 30-pound red looped band. And as soon as I could sit up straight, I would just sit. And after this, I went to my parents' house because I couldn't like take care of my kids, or like my leg was so sensitive. I kid you not, just touching it with your finger would have made me scream. It hurt so bad.
Sure.
And I was like, the last thing I want are 2 3-year-old twins coming and jumping on me. Right. So I'm at my parents' house. I'm sitting on the edge of their sofa, and I'm doing little band pull aparts with the 30-pound loop band. And my first workout back was band pull aparts, a little shoulder stretch, a little neck stretch. And then I did some shoulder circles just with the weight of my arms, for like a minute. And that's where I started back again. And then it got to the point where I could lay on an incline bench, and my dad would hand me some dumbbells, and I would just do like 15-pound dumbbell incline press, as many as I could, and then pretty soon I could hang on a bar, and then I could start rehabbing my leg. And this went a little bit too far, as I mentioned, because I did get to a point where I was trying to prove something eventually.
Yeah.
But those were a lot of the demons that I had beforehand that I did need to conquer as a part of this recovery. And it really wasn't until about 8 months later where I actually tried to go do the Tour de Stations, Everest Rome in Switzerland. And I still had an open wound. I'm like changing bandages on this international flight in the bathroom. It was crazy. I was like, it was crazy.
Yeah,
But
that's nuts.
I was so used to pushing myself, like I did the double Everest ride when I averaged like 10 hours a week on the bike. And I went and did a 27-hour double Everest. Like it was like, and just the ability to push myself, it was there and it was in me, but it wasn't healthy. There was an extent where it just really wasn't healthy anymore. So I had to push myself beyond the limit to the point where I felt confident saying, you know what, this is a Jesus take the wheel moment. Like God, I've been trying to do this my way, and I've been trying to steer this ship, and I've been forcing it, and I've done every single thing that I could, but I need to let go right now. I need to back
Yeah.
off. I need to recalibrate. And in that process, it was so cool because, over the next years, like what happened mentally and where it's taken me to today is like that is something I'm very grateful for. And I'm still working on getting back, really it's just like getting my power back on the bike. I've actually gained all my muscle mass back. My performance in the gym, with the exception of specific lower body movements, has come back. I have no open wounds. I have new pain, but as far as just generally being healthy and capable, I can't run yet. Again, that's still something I'm working on, but I have my health back, and I'm so grateful for that. And so it's exciting too, because I keep making this little bit of incremental progress, and it's so hopeful because I had a very high standard of performance before, and I train and I work with and I'm friends with professional athletes. So it's like normal to me to perform at a high level. So to be willing to show up to events, to ride, and to do it knowing that I'm not going to impress anybody with my physical capability is something I had to learn how to be comfortable with. And once I did, the process of actually regaining some of that strength's been really rewarding, because now it's just fun. Like it's just fun to get fitter, and to
Yeah.
go and perform. And, now I'm having these moments where I'll go ride and I'm pain free and I'm getting faster and I can really push and I feel strong. And then looking around and I'm like, this is why I love cycling so much. This is why I'm in this sport.
Yeah.
It's just, it's very cool. So yeah, I feel like I've gained more from the accident than it's taken from me, without a doubt.
I can't even begin to imagine this journey and your resilience. And I see your Instagram and I see you moving. It's hard to imagine someone that look as healthy, as fit, and moves as you move went through all that. I'm so happy that
Thank
you
you.
have had a full recovery. I know there's still things to be conquered, like going back to running and hopefully being pain free. But yeah, not an easy journey physically and mentally and emotionally. I
No.
mean, it touches everything in you, like you just said. Um, Recovery isn't just one big breakthrough; it's a lot of tiny, small wins.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I see all these lessons you have learned on rebuilding your body.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I'm just seriously so grateful for it. The support system has been insane, and the tools I've been given to recover from it. I mean, it's a big motivation for me as a coach now, because there's so many things that I've had to implement that I know most people wouldn't know to do or know how to do or just have that information. So it's become this new motivation for me, from strength training itself to mindset strategies to setting goals to becoming more consistent. This is something I'm just feeling more and more convicted to make sure I can deliver this information and help people through it, because I had this very unique history of training knowledge. Like I was already certified in corrective exercise, and it was a huge part of my business prior to this because I grew up racing downhill mountain bikes. So, there was ACLs and
Yeah.
collarbones and arms and like all sorts of other injuries over the years from that. And so I was already used to going through the rehab process, but nothing like even close to this. But then again, those tools were still there, and I had built the mindset and the strength mentally to actually push myself through the process. And I hung on to those anchors of knowing like that the frequency is the most important, the consistency. It's like, okay, you can keep getting a little bit better, but I'm somebody who's performed at an extremely high level, and I have to go back to the point where my workouts are literally like grandma exercises. Like I give 70-year-old women harder workouts than I can do right now, and this is what I have to do. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's been very humbling, but I also understand that I had these tools and resources and not everyone does. And so for me to be able to help people and deliver this information and hopefully help someone through something like that it's like this new energy behind the mission. It's exciting. I'm so excited for the future of dialed health and all that can be done through this side of the sport. It's very exciting to think about.
Yeah, which brings me to my next question. What's next and how can people find you? Because you don't train just people in California. I mean, this day and age, everything is so global and accessible. So, how can people find you? How can people train with you?
It's all through dialedhealth.com, and I train through Training Peaks. You can use my strength training programs that are pre-built. They include mobility. They have anything from corrective exercise to full-on strength workouts, tons of options for you depending on equipment and your training history. That's all through dialedhealth.com. And you can also apply to train with me one-on-one and have me be your coach for strength training and for riding through there as well. And that's what I'm doing now. It's exciting. It's exciting to all be on Training Peaks. I've been transitioning from a few different platforms, including my own over the years. So it feels like things have settled in a really strong foundation and can be built from there. But yeah, all of my training programs are through dialedhealth.com.
Awesome. Everything will be on the episode description. I'm conscious
Thank
of
you.
time. I just have a few fire chat questions.
But yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Squats or deadlifts?
Deadlifts.
Morning or evening workouts?
Morning.
Trainer ride or gym?
Oh, that's way harder than those other ones. Gym.
One mobility drill everyone should do.
The runner's stretch. You want me to explain that real quick?
Yes, please.
It's like a deep lunge. Your hands are on the instep of your front foot, and then you reach your elbow down to your instep of your foot, and then you twist and rotate up toward the ceiling. It's really simple to do, but it does a lot. It's one of those mobility drills that I just kind of can't get away from as a trainer,
Yeah,
So
I love that one
stretch.
actually because the twist of the spine and you also feel your hips and your hip flexors, which for cyclists, we're so tight there.
Yeah, totally. It does a ton.
Best recovery habit.
Track your protein.
Foam roller or massage gun?
Oh my, these are good questions. In that
you.
last one, I was like, oh my gosh, stretching at night would be one. Foam roller, I would pick a foam roller, but I love my massage gun. They really do. I use them differently. Yeah. Oh, can I just say this real quick?
Yes.
Foam roller is great for deeper massage and mobility. A massage gun is very good for getting rid of aches, like body aches. So if you have achy legs after a ride, hit it with a massage gun right away. It will take that ache away faster than anything else. So, and also to just like get you relaxed for nighttime. Massage guns are very low effort. Foam rollers take a little bit more effort. So I use both of them daily.
Okay, good. Thanks for sharing. Heavy weights or body weight?
Oh, personally, body weight.
Recovery ride or complete rest?
Recovery ride.
Last but not least, ride longer or ride stronger?
These are probably some of the best questions I've heard actually on a podcast.
You.
I'm just gonna say ride longer. I'll say ride longer.
Okay.
But it's hard for me to say that. But yeah.
Derek, thank you so much for coming to Zone to Speak. I think today's conversation is a reminder that building a body that is resilient to handle whatever life or cycling throws at you, it's important. So thanks for sharing your knowledge. Thanks for joining Zone to Speak.
Thanks for having me. That was awesome. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you. And that's all for today's episode. I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider following, leaving a review, and sharing it with your friends.